Imagine if the government had a secret organization that controlled every aspect of our lives and the choices we make. Follow David as he devised their plan so he can clap some ballerina named Elise. For real. This one starts with this guy campaigning to be the next senator from New York, David Norris. He's at a school, on the TV, on the papers, everywhere. But the paper is interesting because it's talking about him once being charged with disorderly conduct, or something like that. A magazine even calls him New York's bad boy congressman. Next, we see him on a ship taking a walk and in a bar. You know, politicians will go anywhere and everywhere during campaign season. But there's good news for him because he seems to be leading in the polls. In one of his public addresses, we see this guy with a menacing look in the audience. Now, when you see a famous face in the audience in a movie, you already know something is about to happen. And something does happen because in the very next scene, we see a picture of David Norris on the front page of the newspaper. And it's about a college reunion prank caught on film. He had one whole page dedicated to him. Man, his ops are really working overtime. Next thing, we see that guy from the crowd receiving a call from someone who just asked if he has any ideas. This guy, his name is Harry by the way, just says he's working on it. Still no smile from him. Next up, David checks into a hotel room and turns on the TV to watch guys on CNN dissect him. Must be a hard watch, but he's taking notes. Now we see Harry and 3 other men on a rooftop. They're all wearing coats and hats. They look like a cult. The leader says they have a big night ahead of them and asks them if they're ready. He then looks at Harry and tells him he needs a vacation because of how tired he looks. Harry replies that a vacation can't fix the kind of tired he is. Relatable. I'll still take the vacation though, please. Back to David, and the numbers are no longer looking pretty. His campaign manager, Charlie, tries to motivate him, but he just apologizes to Charlie for wasting his time and goes off to the bathroom to practice his loser speech. As he's practicing in the bathroom, a lady comes out of a stall and apologizes for being here. Apparently, she's hiding in the men's bathroom from security because she crashed a wedding upstairs. You know what's crazy? It was a dare. According to her, she dared herself. I don't think that counts. David tells her about the time he crashed a wedding and spent a night in jail, and they share jokes about him not winning and how his opponent is such a tool. They're sharing a moment now. You can tell he's getting to like her. The connection is so real that David thinks they might have met before, and before you know it, they're already getting close. Charlie walks in on them, and the lady quickly makes her way out. David chases her, but she only adjusts his tie and runs away as 2 security men are coming for her. That little moment just breathed new life into David, and he's so ready to go give his speech. Have you ever seen a politician run up like that to give a loser speech? That's the power of a pretty lady. Not like I'd know what that's like though. He goes on to throw away everything his team prepared for him to say, and delivered his speech from the heart. It was authentic. So authentic that he immediately becomes the early favorite for the next election. Later, we see the hat men on a bench planning on how to get coffee spilled on David's shirt at 7:05 a.m. at the latest. The next morning, after a brief call with Charlie, David goes out with his cup of coffee in his hand. Time is 7:05 and Harry just missed his target. He slept off on the bench and now David just got on the bus. He's really running for the bus now. Meanwhile, can you imagine David's luck? The mystery lady from the men's room the other night is on the bus, and the seat beside her is vacant. Why do things like this never happen to me? Anyway, she congratulates him on his speech and tells him he has to run again. He says he's not sure, but you know who's surely running right now? Harry. As fast as he can too, and he sort of catches the bus. From a distance, he makes a throwing gesture, and it looks like something just dropped in David's coffee, but the coffee spills on the lady and not on David. Harry gets hit by a taxi for his troubles, and while he's on the floor, he checks his little notepad which basically tells him he hasn't gotten the job done yet. But in the bus, the lady is trying to do it for him as she jokingly tells David to let her spill some coffee on him so they'll be even. But that doesn't work. Instead of the coffee going on his shirt, it's his phone that goes into the coffee. Yes, she threw it in, and after she does, she finally introduces herself. Her name is Elise. She writes her number down and gets down at her stop. David immediately calls Charlie and tells him what just happened. He's just too excited. David arrives at his office building with no coffee stain on his shirt. He's greeting everybody but getting no response, but he doesn't really think much of it. He heads straight for the boardroom, and what he sees is very strange. Charlie and a couple other men are frozen while the hat men and some men in some kind of hazmat suit are doing some strange examination on Charlie's face. I don't even know what that is. Once they see David, they immediately start chasing after him and he runs into an office and locks himself in. He tries to dial 911, but unsurprisingly, the phone lines are disconnected. They finally pin him down and Harry puts a handkerchief over his face, which sedates him. When he wakes up, he finds himself tied up in an empty warehouse. There are more men now. David is asking questions about what's going on. The men think about what to do for a moment. Then this guy just comes up to David, introduces himself as Richardson, and tells him they're the people that make sure things happen according to plan. David gets up and tries to run away, but with just a point of a finger, Richard trips him and he falls. The men pick him up and take him back to the seat. Richardson tells him he can read his mind and proves it to him right there. David is losing his mind. Richardson goes on to tell him that he just found out something about the world that he was not supposed to ever find out about, and it's not his fault. His path this morning was supposed to be adjusted by Harry, but he failed. He goes on to explain how their adjustments work. An accidental spilling of your coffee, your internet going out, misplacing your keys, all that stuff. Sometimes it's chance, sometimes it's these guys nudging people back on plan like he claims. And that's what should have happened this morning. The coffee spill should have set him back 10 minutes, and he wouldn't have seen what he saw. Anyway, now he's here, and Richardson says, when the little nudging doesn't work. Cue in recalibration. Basically, they'll change your mind for you. And David is now discovering they've already done that with Charlie, but he's assured that his friend is okay. As Richardson is talking, a car arrives and men come out and start approaching them. Richardson tells him if he'll let him go, he has to never tell anyone about this or their existence. If not, they'd erase his brain. His friends and family would think he's gone crazy. And like that is not enough, Richardson tells him he can never see Elise again. How are you just gonna snatch a man's newfound joy from him like that? They don't even leave it to chance. They take the card where she wrote her number and burn it up. After that, they carry him and dump him in Charlie's office just when Charlie is entering. David is confused and Charlie is confused by his confusion. But right now, they have to go for a meeting. Of course, he's not paying attention to a single thing at the meeting. He's still confused. Who wouldn't be? But Charlie can sense something is wrong. So he takes David aside after the meeting and asks him what's going on. David can't tell him the truth. So he just tells him he's feeling like this because he lost Elise's phone number. And Charlie believes it. I mean, losing a woman can have this sort of effect on a man. Or so I've been told. We now see David at a bar trying to write Elise's number from memory. When Harry walks in and tells him that this is all futile. Even if he remembers the number, they'll cause some adjustments. And he'll never get through. Maybe a lost cell phone, change a number, or whatever causes the fewest ripples. David has some stern words for Harry about what they did to Charlie, and Harry tells him that Charlie will be okay, and he mentions getting authorization from the chairman. More about this later. Anyway, Harry tells David they can't talk here, so he asks him to meet at the 4 p.m. boat, and he'll answer his questions. But before he leaves, he reminds David of what will happen if he reveals them to anyone, even unintentionally. It appears that Harry is David's guardian angel of some sort. So of course, David goes to meet him on the boat, and he starts throwing the questions. Of course, he wants to know what they were doing with Charlie, and Harry says they were only changing the way he weighs investment risks. Harry calms his mind about what Richardson said earlier. He tells him they can't actually read his mind. They can only perceive when his mind weighs options before making decisions. Sounds like reading minds with extra steps, but okay. He tells David that they're only here to keep him on plan. That's all they're authorized to do. Harry goes on to tell him that water blocks their ability to read his decisions, a piece of information that will come in handy later. David asks if they're angels, and he says they're more like case officers who live a lot longer than humans, but people call them angels. Like me, only a couple seconds ago. Finally, David wants to know why they're keeping him from Elise. Harry says he doesn't know exactly why, but going by the amount of resources they've used, keeping him from her is very important to them. He advises him not to bother looking for her and just move on with his life. You'll never find her, he says. But well, one fateful day 3 years later, David gets on the bus to work as usual, and guess who he sees? Elise, of course. She's not on the bus though. He sees her through the window taking a walk and immediately gets out and follows her. He catches up with her and tells her that he rode that bus to work every day for 3 years hoping he'd run into her, but that never happened. But she's not very enthusiastic about all of this. To be fair, it's been years, and he didn't call after she gave him her number. David just calls in sick and begs her to take a walk with him so he can explain everything. She reluctantly agrees, and he's trying to sweet talk his way back into her feelings. Meanwhile, a man just runs into Richardson to give him an update about David. He's off plan. They get to work to try and disrupt this union. Meanwhile, she just invited him to come watch her dance tomorrow, and they're currently having drinks. Then boom, Charlie shows up. Of course, this is the handiwork of the Adjustment Bureau. Charlie says people are waiting for his announcement speech right now. This man really left his announcement speech to talk with the lady? Man, oh man, when will we change? David invites her to come with, but she says she has to rehearse, and wait for it, he suggests that they postpone the announcement. This guy is unbelievable. Of course, nobody's pushing the speech, so they agree to meet once he's done. Her rehearsal is happening close to where he'll be giving his speech anyway. They get up to leave, and you can see the lovebirds inching closer and closer. But Richardson can't let things progress, so he intervenes through a text to Charlie's phone, requiring urgency. So what could have been a full-blown French ends up being a mere lip to cheek, and the adjustment guys are finally relieved. Apparently a kiss would have ruined things for them. David now heads to the podium, and while he's giving his speech, an unsuspecting David goes on to announce that he'll be running for Senate again. Then we see Elise get a text that rehearsal has been moved. David, meanwhile, notices the adjustment guys through a window, and he ditches the interviews he's supposed to do right after the announcement to go look for Elise. He heads to the studio where the rehearsal was supposed to hold, and it's locked, and he immediately puts a call through to Cedar Lake, but the call fails. Richardson decides to step in and talk to him. He's asking him why he's obsessing over this one woman when there's a whole world of women out there. He's basically telling David that how he feels doesn't matter. What matters is what's in black and white, which is that they're not meant to be together. David figures Richardson doesn't even know why he and Elise are not supposed to be together, so he walks off. He goes to a restaurant and asks for directions to Cedar Lake. He gets it and tries to get a cab, but none of them stop for him. The one who stops gets run into immediately. He calls the ambulance for the accident victims and finally finds a cab. Boy, this guy is really determined to get this girl. The adjustment guys are doing their best to stop him, but they're just a second too late. The moment he sets eyes on Elise, he hit his ripple limit, according to them, so there was nothing more they could do. They just turned around and left. These guys are definitely not ever forgiving Harry. Richardson heads straight to a building and is now talking with a few guys who tell him that David and Elise were meant to be together because they were meant to be together. Because of remnants from earlier versions of the plan, the paths of these two just keep crossing, but the Adjustment Bureau is determined to tear them apart yet again. So what do? They kick Richardson off the case. But Richardson makes sure to tell Harry that it was never his fault in the first place, because David and Elise were meant to to be together. Man, Harry definitely needed to hear that. Anyway, they now had the case to this guy called Thompson, some really tough guy at the bureau apparently. Well, he's going to have a really tough job because these two are falling deeper in love by the minute. I mean, look at them playing around on the road. They even head to a party together. David doesn't care that he's going to be a senator. After the party, David tells Elise about how he lost his mom and brother within a month of each other, and his father took him to a Senate gathering right after their demise, and that's how he decided to go into politics. Wholesome, I guess. Of course, that story leads to a clapping. Use your imagination. Oh, Thompson, you have a heck of a job to do. But he starts immediately. He watches them cuddling like a creepy old man. And the next morning, David is gone. Sigma male oh, okay, he actually just wanted to get breakfast. False alarm. But Elise gets a pretty suspicious call from her ex, Adrian, with whom she broke up 3 months ago. She thinks it's really strange that this happened, especially considering that he called 4 times in one morning out of the blue. When she mentions that last part, you can see from David's face that he knows what's happening. He asks what happened with her ex, and she tells him he was a dancer. They had the same group of friends, they had known each other for a long time, and they were even engaged. But she didn't marry him because of David. Crazy, right? She said the moment she felt what she felt with David, that was it. She was not going to settle for less. David promises he won't hurt her, and says it's the first time in 25 years that he doesn't feel like he's by himself. But after this really emotional moment, he has to leave. He has an interview, but he's not ready to let Elise out of his sight yet, so he takes her with him. She's in a separate room, and just as the interview wraps up, this guy who looks like he works at the studio comes in and tells her that David was just called into an urgent meeting and he'll call as soon as he's out. I know for sure David didn't say that. This is definitely Thompson at work. And I'm very right, because that same guy ushers David through a series of doors, which leads him to the warehouse. But this time he meets Thompson, not Richardson. Thompson starts telling him about how mankind has done horribly without the Adjustment Bureau. All the atrocities of the last 100 years, including the release of She-Hulk, all happened when the Adjustment Bureau decided to take a step back. That's why they decided to step back in before humans did something nobody could fix. He tells David that humans no longer have free will. What we have is the appearance of free will. We make the small decisions. They make the big ones. But all David wants to know right now is why he can't be with Elise. Thompson goes on to explain to him that the day he first met Elise, it wasn't chance, it was them. They knew she'd inspire him to give that speech, which would go on to make him the frontrunner in this election, and 4 more after it, which they want him to win. Not just Senate elections, by the way. So they're basically telling him to choose between Elise and becoming POTUS, President of the United States. Thompson tells him he can change the world, but not while he's with Elise, because she'll rub off on him in the long run, and the president can't be a loose cannon. This doesn't make any sense, but okay. Anyway, David gives a convincing speech about his feelings for Elise and how they'll never change. So Thompson lets him go. He opens the door and tells him if he leaves now, he can make Elise a show. And he leaves and actually makes the show. Thompson comes with him and tells him the final part of this complicated love story. If he stays with her, it not only kills his dreams, it kills her. I mean, it kills hers. Her dreams, that is. She could go on to become one of the world's most famous choreographers. But if she stays with David, she'd end up as a dance teacher for 6-year-olds. Boo-hoo. The decision just got tougher for David. A lot tougher. And things start unraveling very quickly as Elise hurts her leg right there on the stage. David quickly runs to her and he takes her to a hospital where an x-ray is now being done on her leg. Thompson shows up again as he's in the waiting room and tells David that he's to blame for what happened to Elise. David quickly stands up and lands a punch on Thompson's face, but Thompson eats it like a champ and tells David that this is what he always does. He did this the night he first got elected when he got into a bar fight, and it was something like this that got him that embarrassing photo in the New York Post. He keeps squandering golden opportunities the Bureau gives him with impulse, and Elise is not helping him with it. Thompson rounds off his speech by telling him Elise only had a sprain, but if he remains with her, he'd end up taking from her the only thing she ever cared about. So what does David do? He goes to meet Elise, gives her a hug, and tells her he has to go make a couple phone calls. Oh, he's ghosting her for sure. I know that look. Richardson goes to meet Harry and tells him the job is finally done. Meanwhile, Elise is now being wheeled away by one of the hospital staff. You can see sadness in her eyes. 11 months later, David is giving another speech, and the news says he's leading in the polls. Charlie pulls him aside after the speech and tells him that Elise is getting married to Adrian. It's on the papers. Harry is also reading that paper, and he leaves a note for David at the bar. They met at the other time. Immediately, David goes out to see him. Harry tells him that Thompson lied when he said Elise brings out David's reckless side. The truth is that Elise is enough. She's enough for him, and if he settles with her, he won't have that need to fill that void inside of him with applause and dreams of making it to the White House. He'll be, what's the word I'm looking for? Fulfilled. Too fulfilled for their liking. Why is Harry telling him all this? Well, because as it appears, he had a hand in his brother's and father's deaths, and he sort of feels bad about that now. David says he can't stop thinking about Elise. He's 16 points up and is already being talked about as a potential presidential candidate, but he doesn't care about any of that. He asks Harry where Elise is getting married and tells him it's happening at the courthouse, but he tells him not to even bother trying because Thompson won't let him get anywhere near her. So David suggests that Harry teach him to move as fast as they do. He agrees and they get to it, moving from door to door and making fast moves. He tells him that twisting the doorknob clockwise is what gets them that fast movement from place to place. He warns him never to twist counterclockwise though, or you'll poop your pants spontaneously. They get to the city's main pumping station and Harry asks him to wait as he goes through a door to get something. David notices that Harry twists the knob counterclockwise this time, and he sees some members of the Adjustment Bureau Bureau inside. Meanwhile, Elise goes to her studio to just dance. She looks very sad. Harry now comes back out with a box and he brings out some books and is teaching David how to use the doors to get to the courthouse without being stopped by Thompson. It's going to be really difficult, but David is determined to do it. Harry tells him to treat everyone he sees in a hat as a threat, and that's any type of hat. A bowler hat, Yankees hat, even a yarmulke. Early the next morning, Harry gives David his hat, wishes him luck, and sets him on his way. David gets out of the first door and just starts running. Immediately, Thompson is informed, and he starts making moves to speed up the wedding. David just keeps running and running until he meets Elise in the bathroom of the courthouse. He tells her she can't marry Adrian, and she tells David not to even touch her because nobody has hurt her like he has. As he's trying to explain to her that he only ghosted her because of aliens, one of the adjustment guys comes in and David just punches him in the face, picks up his book, and basically reveals the adjustment bureau to Elise. Immediately as he does that, the guys notify Thompson and he orders for the intervention team to be called for a square one reset. David knows they're going to reset him, so he just keeps moving. He puts his hat back on and starts moving from door to door again. Elise can't even believe what's going on right now. They just keep traveling from door to door, and now they're at the Statue of Liberty. David tries his best to explain what's going on to her and what the adjustment bureau is, but she doesn't understand. I mean, how could she? David now gives her an option to either leave him or come with him. Of course, she decides to come with him, and they turn the door counterclockwise, and they're transported to where the adjustment bureau congregates. He goes in and throws down every obstacle as he makes his way through a door and up the stairs. By the way, Harry just got summoned by the chairman. David and Elise are still making their way through the building. They're looking for the chairman but find themselves at the rooftop surrounded by these agents in masks. So they just say their I love yous in the middle of the chaos. I mean, what else can you do? But somehow that solves it, because as they embrace, the men disappear. The day brightens up, and Thompson shows up and tells them they couldn't have possibly met the chairman and just changed their fate like that. Harry also shows up with a message for Thompson. He reads it and leaves. Harry talks to the lovebirds and tells them how brave they were and how it touched the chairman, who then went out to rewrite the plan just for them. Love indeed conquers all, doesn't it? Moral of the story? That was dumb.